yesterday about this time, I got a phone call. It was from a number I didn't recognise, and it was about this time. And I said, please text me when we got into a break, I think at about 8 o'clock. And it was Arlene Thomas Hewitt. Now, Arlene Thomas, you might remember, was the world aerobics champion. And, oh gosh, 90s? Yeah, 1990s, wasn't she? She was the first person, I think she and some chap who's, sorry, his name I can't remember, put aerobics on the map, and her daughter, in actual fact, Lizzie, would go on to become a very, very good school, and could have gone all the way as well, except she's gone down a different athletic path. And it was to tell me that a very good friend of mine and the godfather of my daughter, Lucy, Norm Hewitt, died. And so if I was a little bit scattered in the last 2 hours of the show yesterday, you'll understand why. And yesterday I obviously talked to the family, posted a media release for the family yesterday, distributed it. And then obviously there were media people who wanted to know a little bit more. I'll have an insight into Norm Hewitt. He died at 55 years of age of motor neuron disease. Motor neuron disease is the worst, I think, way to die of any way in which you could possibly choose. And I had encountered motor neuron disease, can I say, before, because my oldest daughter, who is Rachel, and she's now in her 40s, her mother, Adrian, died roughly the same age as Norm, also of motor neuron disease about 20 years ago. So it was, I have had, unfortunately, a dreadful experience to have the mother of my oldest daughter and also, and a previous partner, obviously, Adrian, and now my best friend, Norm Hewitt, die in such a way. And it's a cruel disease, motor neuron disease, because it is a disease that literally withers the body, in which the victim loses all control of their body, but their mind, and for Norm in particular, it remains razor sharp until the end. You are a completely sentient, intelligent and aware individual, but it's just that your body has decided systematically to betray you, and you lose all control of everything over months, and for some people, over years. When I composed and I wrote the very first Death with Dignity bill in this country and introduced it to Parliament in the mid-1990s, and David Seymour, thank God, picked it up 20 years later and much more successfully had it turned into law. The voluntary euthanasia, or the Death with Dignity bill that we all voted for, was meant to provide an option for people just like Norm and just like Adrian. It was designed to ensure that people who were encountering or who had a terminal disease could choose the order of their own passing with the assistance of the medical profession. But one of the great flaws of the existing voluntary euthanasia legislation is that almost every sufferer of motor neuron disease, those who perhaps most need that option, are denied it because of the terminology that affects the assisted with dying legislation. And what it means is that under the current law, 2 medical practitioners must effectively guarantee, on the pain of imprisonment and financial punishment, that someone is going to die within 6 months of their say-so, thus allowing them to access the assisted dying legislation. The problem is that you cannot, with motor neuron disease, definitively say that somebody is going to die within 6 months. And so most motor neuron disease sufferers out there, and as I talk to you now, are suffering in silence and unable to be assisted with the very piece of legislation that we specifically, and 2/3 of us voted on, and said, yes, this is mercy for this group of people. And it is a flaw in the legislation, and dear Lord, it needs to be fixed. I will say that. That's the first thing I want to say. But the second thing I'd like to say is this. Norm Hewitt was an extraordinary man. He was, I wrote his biography, Gladiator, 20 odd years ago. But I had been a friend of his for a decade prior to that. We're an odd partnership, Norm and I, in a funny sort of way. Obviously, he's much younger than I am. Maori, came from a working class background. Te Ati was where he was raised or educated. He actually, for a long time at school, wanted to be a mongrel mob hitman. That was the limit of his ambition. And he was saved first by rugby, but he had an inexhaustible thirst for alcohol. And he would literally become a Jekyll and Hyde personality. When he was sober, he was definitely Dr. Jekyll, and Mr. Hyde, or Boris, as his alter ego became known, would ride out when he had alcohol. He was, as a young man, a bully, a drug dealer, and then became an All Black. Rugby saved him and yet condemned him in a funny sort of way. He wasn't an exceptional All Black, as most people will know who follow the game. He was the understudy to the great Sean Fitzpatrick for much of his All Black career. He would, though, go on and captain the Hurricanes, the New Zealand Maori, which he was very proud of, and the Wellington team that would eventually go down to Canterbury in an epic game, win the NPC. He would be chastised even in that moment of victory by the Minister of ACC because he ended up playing almost all of the second half with a broken arm, but refused to come off. And as he was then publicly criticised. Ironically, the person who criticised him, that particular minister, Ruth Dyson, was a week later caught drink driving in Wellington. So there was a karma, I guess. But anyhow, it was after rugby that he made, and that turned his life around. He had a particular event with alcohol which led to him terrorising a couple in Queenstown, just down the road from me now, when he had got drunk, and Boris was very much, Mr. Hyde was very much on the loose. After that particular incident in which he nearly died because he cut himself so severely as he placed both fists through a plate glass window, he never touched alcohol again. And with the love and support, particularly of his mother, Mabel, and his partner, and then wife, Arlene, he forged a career. He reinvented himself. He became the person that he really was, and with a deep spirituality and a love for others, particularly others in trouble, because he knew what trouble was. He'd been in it. He'd been literally to the depths of hell. He dedicated the rest of his life to helping those. And one of those people is me. There are hundreds, very possibly thousands, but I would certainly know hundreds and hundreds of people all over New Zealand whose lives were affected for the better because Norm Hewitt came into it. He had a deep spirituality. And here is the irony of all this. He was steeped, that spirituality was steeped in Te Ao Māori. He very much lived in the Maori world and his spirituality, and he straddled both the Pākehā worlds and the Maori worlds with ease. Again, you can see how odd that white boy, one of his mates, his brothers, a very conservative, as you know, white man who thinks the Treaty of Waitangi is one of the greatest snares this country's ever come across, and Norm, proud captain of the Maori All Blacks, steeped in Maori spiritualism. We were brothers. But on this morning, I only wanted to say this because his life, short as it was, he died at 55, leaving a grieving wife, Arlene, two beautiful children, Elizabeth and Alexander, Lizzie and Alex. Can I say, it's not the quantity of the life that you have, it most surely is the quality. There is no question of that. And Norm Hewitt's quality of life, the legacy that he leaves, will remain with me and literally hundreds and thousands of people in this country forever. But no, the message that he really engendered over the last 25 years of his life was this: whatever you are today, and however bad your circumstances might be, tomorrow you don't have to be the same person. You can change. And he was the living embodiment of that self-awareness that tomorrow doesn't have to be the same as today, and that you individually have the capacity to change your life and your circumstance, your outlook and your future. And it seems such a trite thing to say those things, but there are literally, and he knew that as much as anybody, thousands, tens of thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands of New Zealanders not living their best life, as I talked to you this morning. And yet it only requires one act by them, that they want to change their life. Nobody else, them, that can ensure that they have a better tomorrow, and so does everybody, including their family and whānau around them. And that simple message, he could preach because he had literally lived it. That is the legacy of Norm Hewitt. I will miss my brother dearly and greatly, not as much though as Arlene and Alexander and Lizzie, and obviously his wider family as well. But I will dedicate, and let us dedicate ourselves, to making sure that the Death with Dignity legislation, the voluntary euthanasia legislation, that 2/3 of us voted to bring in for people just like Norm and those suffering from motor neuron disease. He would have potentially employed it at some time in the future, but he certainly explored the option with me. I can share that with you. And his great frustration was that was an option, not an option that was available to him. Nevertheless, his legacy is also one of kindness, and one, I guess, and maybe that's the legacy for me as well, the idea that Maori and Pākehā, from different cultural and spiritual and ethnic backgrounds, can walk together in love, friendship and peace, because in many ways he was the best that New Zealand represents. To my friend Norm Hewitt, go well, my friend. I will see you soon.